That was happened to me the first half. Oh, there we go.
Everybody's internet's just bad today. I don't know what's going on with that.
Yeah, very strange.
Yeah. Whatever. I'll have to just clip things together and post. I forgot what I was talking about. Oh, I was talking about the Tomb of Horrors and how stupid it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't even remember where I cut off at this point. And then I was going to go use the restroom while it was down. But I couldn't because Buck is already in the restroom.
Oh.
And has been in there the entire time that the internet was down.
Bastard. See, he was smarter.
Yeah.
Bastard. Well, I tweeted at the 3 people who were here.
Yeah.
The 3 people I knew of. So hopefully they'll get the link to come back. But Kat was saying that she was going to draw a picture of Vieira. Is that right?
The what?
Or
Vieira.
I don't know.
Yeah, like for Fran and stuff. That's so we've been over this too. You never played Final Fantasy 12.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
And the only other place they show up is do you know Final Fantasy Tactics? Have you ever played any of those games?
I've not played them.
Okay. Those go all the way back to the PS1. You should play them. They're fun. They're kind of like...
Did you see the bunny lady that my character always runs to whenever we go to Noble Court?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's a Vera. They're the bunny girls from Final Fantasy. And they first appeared in Tactics. Final Fantasy Tactics is a fun game. You should play it if you haven't.
Okay.
It's kind of like a Fire Emblem style game or whatever, or a chess game. You have a bunch of units that you level up, you move them across a map, D&D style, and they have a skirmish and engage with people.
Yeah.
It's actually probably plays more similar to what we're playing than an actual Final Fantasy game. I don't know why. Actually, I don't know. They might have, but they honestly should have just pulled the stats and stuff from a Final Fantasy Tactics game and made a role-playing game off of that. But they are native to the world of Ivalice, or Ivalice, depending on the dub of the game. And Ivalice is the world where Tactics takes place in Final Fantasy 12. And they're like these elven bunny girls. I mean, technically the male ones exist, but nobody's ever seen them. And they're a sexually segregated species, so they only come together for mating. And in the games, you only ever see the girl ones. They're bunny girls. They're very nimble, they're very tall, they live for a really long time, like elves. Fran seems like a young to middle-aged adult, but she's actually at least 50 years old. Maybe much more than that. Yeah, because she talks about something that happened 50 years ago.
Why haven't I played this game? I like these bunny girls.
Yeah.
Do they have cottontails or no?
Yeah, depending on the game. I don't think... France might have armor covering hers, because I don't think you actually see hers, but... Yeah. In Tactics, they have like little cottontails and stuff.
Yeah, I can't find a picture of one from behind.
Yeah.
Oh, damn, they're wearing... Oh, there we go. There we go.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, that's a man. Damn it.
Yeah, Fran is
That is
great.
one
She's one of my
sexy
favorite
guy.
characters in 12.
Well, see, now I'm gonna have to play Final Fantasy 12. I might have to skip after I get done with 6. I'll skip ahead to 12.
Yeah. Like,
Those are long
I have
years.
complaints about 12 because it doesn't play like a Final Fantasy game. 11 was really popular, so they basically wanted to make a game that plays like 11. But aside from that, it's honestly one of my favorite Final Fantasy games. I put it like right up there.
11 was one of the online ones?
Yeah, 11 was online. So after 11, they basically wanted to make a single-player game that played like 11. It's still a really fun game. I really like the Gambit system that they have, and what it is so that you could have all the people running around at the same time, because you can only really control one. And you could switch between them. But when you're not controlling them, you can set like these little if this then that statements in it, the Gambits. So like if creature is flying, or like if enemy's flying, use thunder. right? Because there's a really good chance that as a flying enemy, it's going to be weak to thunder.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of stuff like that, and you can put the priority. So for your healer in the group, it's like you can have the priority if your character is below 70%, use Cure. If the character drops below 50, use Cura. Or in that one, every even one was a group one. So it was Cura and Curaja were group heals. Cure and Curaga were single heals. So there's all kinds of different things you could do to figure out how you were going to have your characters auto-play while you're running around.
Well, it's hard to find a good shot of the back end of a Viera, but it does appear that some of them may have tails.
Yeah. So Fran is technically wearing armor. It barely looks like armor, but she is wearing armor. Zodiac version. Yeah. That's the one thing I don't like about Zodiac Age, which is the specific. So Kat says, I'm playing the Zodiac version, so you have to make them specific classes. Ultimately, your characters are stronger in the Zodiac job system, which is what they called the original Japanese version. It was Final Fantasy XII, the Zodiac job system. The remade version that we have now is called Zodiac Age. And the jobs can be better. They have more options. There's more buffs to your stats in the system, so your characters get stronger. I like the old license board better. So the original version of the game, everybody's stuff were on one big board, right? It's called the license board. It kind of looked like a checkerboard in a way. And each spot was like an ability. Some passive usually, sometimes active. And that's how you bought like your ability to use certain spells or your ability to equip certain weapons. And you couldn't just buy a weapon and equip it. You had to have the license for that. It was almost like the British version of Final Fantasy. Oi! You got a license for that. So like you would buy Spears 1 and that would let you equip this group of spears. Spears 2 would let you equip the stronger group of spears, and so on and so forth. And eventually, if you grinded up as much license points as possible, you could fill out the whole board. The only thing you couldn't get is the Eidolons, which is basically what they just renamed Espers later on, because those were fixed to a certain character, and there were... How many are in the game? I'm trying to think. I think there's enough Eidolons that everybody gets at least 2, but some people get 3. I think that's how it works, if I recall. Yeah.
I never played it.
But it's cool. It's cool. It's like this cool license board, and you were just, you got to choose what class your character became. Now, they did get different stats, so some people were going to be better at doing certain things than others, like Balthier is a Sky Pirate. He starts out with guns. He's really good at using ranged weapons. Same with Fran, who starts out with bows and arrows. If you continue going down that line, they're really good ranged characters that can use certain spells because their stats are min-maxed for that. But if you wanted them to use swords or lances or whatever, you could pat them down to use that stuff. If you wanted to turn Balthier into effectively a blue mage, or like a red mage or something like that. There's no blue magic in that system. They have a green magic system. You could turn him into that, and it was fully within your ability to do so. You can't do that in Zodiac Age. In Zodiac Age, you can equip 2 jobs to a character. And each of those jobs get a license board that you can fill out. In the Switch version, you can reset those jobs whenever you want by going to Mont Blanc, or Mont Blanc, I don't know how you pronounce his name. They never say it. So I'm assuming maybe it's version? It's like, yeah, the Switch version, Zodiac Age. You can talk to him in the Clan Centurial Hall, and you can have him basically have them forget their jobs. They'll forget the job, and you can re-equip 2 new jobs to them. They'll have all the license points that you had accrued and spent, and you can just re-spend them on the new job how you want. So it's almost like a no harm, no foul system. But it's still just not as cool. You can't grind up points and then load them out through the whole map. It's just whatever's on that board.
Right.
But it's a cool game. Like I was saying, you never get to see Fran's tail because she's wearing like this weird leather armor getup that barely covers anything, so it's not really much of armor. It looks nice though, I'm not going to complain. And she kind of has like this sharp point coming out of the back where the tail would be. I think it probably houses her tail. It's tail armor. But yeah, so she's got like this pyramid coming out of the top of her butt. You do get a nice view of her butt though, so I'm not complaining.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Well, I'll have to get that on Switch, I guess, when it's time for me to play that one.
Try to look for a Square sale on Switch or something, because it is still a full price game.
No.
It is a remake though. It's got a lot of cool features. It lets you speed up gameplay. I think up to, it's either 4 or 8 times. You could go pretty fast with it. So it's really good for grinding. You could just go to an area, you could kill people, kind of just run through and let them auto everybody and grind up experience and license points. What are some of the other features that Zodiac Age has that the original doesn't? I'm trying to remember. There's quite a few.
I'm trying to find my PlayStation emulator, because I'm realizing I'm probably going to beat Final Fantasy 1 pretty soon.
Yeah, so you want to set up for 2. Yeah. There's a trials system that you can load up. That's pretty cool. And you can actually, in this version of Zodiac Age, you can save the trial and just stop. And any items that you get in the trial go to your main account. So you can actually... The problem with the PlayStation version of Zodiac Age when it first came out is you couldn't save back over a main account with the trial. It would just overwrite everything. But now the trial saves are linked to a save file already. So when you update the save, all those items go into your bag and it doesn't overwrite your main save file. So that's kind of cool. And there's just a lot of neat little things in that version of the game. They did a lot to improve it. I think there's even a New Game Plus. And I really like New Game Plus. It's a cool thing in any game.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the I guess the original version of the game, is it not worth trying to find that?
Well, PlayStation 2 emulators kind of suck, to be honest. And the original version was a PlayStation 2 game.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. If you had a PlayStation 2 and, like, the old Elgato or some other form of capture card where you can put, like, the RCA outputs into it, then it'd be worth it. But aside from playing physical, it's like PlayStation 2 emulators suck.
Yeah. Well, that's all right. I mean, I don't have any kind of nostalgia for it. I mean, it's kind of like Final Fantasy 3. I never played the original one of that.
Yeah.
I don't mind playing the 3D remake. And I mean, it can't be that different.
Well, Zodiac Age? Yeah, like the story's exactly the same. Most things are the same. It's just the biggest difference is the license board and how, like, your classes and stuff are. Because there were no classes in the original game. With that system. Like, everybody kind of started in a spot, but you can really branch them anywhere. Kind of like, though this is a little more hard press, Final Fantasy X was like that, with the sphere grid. Except, everybody had their sphere grid, which kind of was their class. But at a certain point, you could start branching out into the extended sphere grid. And basically, everybody wanted Mimic in Final Fantasy X. That was the skill you wanted for every character, because the strategy end game that just got you through the game was to dual cast Meteor with Lulu, and then have everybody mimic her action. In which they would also dual cast Meteor. And you would have like 6 meteors come down in one turn.
They have a similar sounding system. I assume it's the same. I've not played Final Fantasy X yet.
Yeah.
But sounds like a similar system in Dragon Quest XI.
Yeah.
Where you basically you have all these skills. Every time you raise a level, you can get these skills that kind of around in a circle. Mm-hmm. As you get each one, you can go farther out to the outside.
Yeah.
Cool.
I kind of like systems like that because I like it when even if your characters are built to excel in one area, they're like, whatever, I don't care if I make it slightly harder myself. I want this guy to play this way. It just kind of just gives the player freedom to do what they want to do.
Yeah. It's similar to Ultima Online.
Yeah.
You can start a player with a certain set of skills and then just develop a completely different set of skills if you start.
Yeah. Final Fantasy XII was weird in one way. I think I've talked about this on the podcast before. But starting with 7, for some reason, you can only ever really have 3 party members in your team at a time. Mm-hmm. While historically, Final Fantasy was 4 party members at a time, except for 4 in which it could be up to 5 because they had the double row system. And 12's no. Technically, all 6 people are with you when they're with you. You can just only have 3 on the field. But because there was no difference between moving around out of combat and in combat, you could pull up the pause menu and switch out who's in your party at any point in time as long as they weren't already queued up for an action. So they had to finish the action and then you could switch them out. So technically all 6 people were there. And then they also had guest characters, which is something that I'm bringing into the RPG when you guys get further along. And they will have people that sometimes go out with hunts on hunts with you. If you're in certain parts of the story, they'll follow you around, and they'll be usually they're leveled to your party. But they kind of have fixed levels. It's what they think your party should be at that level in the game. Mm-hmm. And they'll follow you around, and sometimes a guest character would follow your party around regardless of whether you're doing the quest or anything. Once they're in your party, you can ride an airship to some other part and be okay, the 4 of us, because there's a 4th person who's now running around at all times with your 3 people in the field, are going to go take down this hunt because I've got an extra person now. Mm-hmm. And they'll have an unlimited supply of potions or stuff to use on you and stuff. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. See, I totally skipped. So I played 7 quite a bit. Never did beat it. Played 8. Absolutely hated it. And then I basically just kind of zoned out. Didn't play any Final Fantasy until 13.
Yeah.
And I played.
Well, I know we went over why before, especially with 12. It's you had children at the time and stuff like that. So.
Right. Yeah, I mean, basically by the time 7 came along, well, when 7 came out, I was still in college. But I didn't really get into it. And then after that, basically tried to start the starting of a family. Yeah. Oh yeah, so I've got 9, and I have played quite a bit on Switch.
Yeah.
9 is very good, but now I'm gonna have to start all over because I've lost my save game.
Because 9, despite having some of the limitations that 7 and 8 had, felt a lot more like an older Final Fantasy game than 7 and 8 did. Oh yeah. I liked 9 a lot. 10, still a good game. It's not as good as 9, but it's still a good game. Still mostly plays like a Final Fantasy game. Most of the time, you're just throwing a summon out in place of your whole party, because that's what Yuna does for the early game. You're just okay, I'm going to do as much damage with this summon while the enemy whittles it down before I put my party in harm's way. 11, again, was an MMO, so that's whatever. It's fun. I enjoyed it, but it's can I get a turn-based MMO? It's possible to do this. I've seen people do it. I actually used to play this really... I call it a shitty MMO, but I enjoyed it too much to really call it a shitty MMO. It was this sprite-based MMO that I think was centered at girls, but I think more guys played it because of the RPG system, and it was called Wonderland Online. And it basically played like Paper Mario. You were these sprites running around the world. When you went into combat, there was a circle of options that went around you, and you picked one. And you could party up with other people that was all turn-based like that. You just had a countdown timer for how long you had to pick your option. It's why couldn't I get a Final Fantasy MMO like that? I would enjoy that quite a bit.
Yeah. Kat says she tried playing Final Fantasy X, but it was after she played 12, so she hated it.
Understandable. 12 is definitely a better game than 10 is.
I was surprised when I got 9. I had thought for some reason that Final Fantasy 9 was a PlayStation 2 game. It's actually a PlayStation 1 game. And I was like appalled by the fact, because God, they come out with Final Fantasy so fast. 7, 8, and 9 were all on the PlayStation 1.
Yep.
Original. And so I was like, when you get out to the overworld, I mean, the graphics are considerably better. But once you get to the overworld, it's like, oh my gosh, yeah, this is a PlayStation 1 game. Like, this is a pretty plain-looking overworld.
Yeah. And if you count MMOs, because you could play 11 on the PlayStation 2, there were also 3 Final Fantasies for the PlayStation 2.
Yeah, 11, 12, and 13.
That's typical, right? Up until recently, they've been slowing down because it took forever for 15 to come out. And 15 wasn't even really 15. It was Versus 13. That should have come out back when I was in high school. That's how, that game had been in development for a decade when it came out.
Wait a minute. PlayStation 2 had 10 and 10
11.
Point 10
well, 10.2. Yeah. So technically 4. But a lot of us like to forget that 10.2 is even a thing.
And 11 and 12.
Yeah.
13.
No, 13 was PlayStation 3.
Oh, right. Okay, so yeah. I got 13. Okay, that's right, because I had a PlayStation 3.
13 is god-awful, and I can understand people not coming back into Final Fantasy if you took a long break and 13 was the next thing you played.
Yeah. They had 4 of them. So PlayStation 3, they had Final Fantasy 13 parts 1, 2, and 3, right?
Yeah.
And then 14, was that on PlayStation 3?
You can play... I don't know. I know you can on PlayStation 4. I don't know when the console version of 14 became available. I think it was PlayStation 4. Because it's been
that was an
slowed
MMO.
down. Yeah, that 14 is an MMO. There's 2 MMO Final Fantasies. Well, you go back too, but that's kind of standard is to have at least 3. Because the NES technically had 3. We only got to see 1, but NES, Famicom, and effectively the same.
Yeah.
Famicom had
NES
3.
had 1, 2, and 3, right?
Super Famicom also had 3 of the
Yeah, that
series.
had 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah, but then it also had some spin-offs too, like Final Fantasy Mystic Quest was on the Super Nintendo. We actually got that here. It's like we didn't get 5, but we got stupid Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, which I think was actually supposed to be... that's not even technically a Final Fantasy game. What game is it supposed to be? I think it's in the same series as Final Fantasy Legends, which is also not a Final Fantasy game.
That was on Game Boy, right?
Yeah.
What
I
was
think
that
both
Final
of
Fantasy
those are in
Adventure?
the same one. They're just branded as Final Fantasy games here in the West. It's got like a longer name that's like completely Japanese.
And that's 13 versus back in like 2006.
2006, yeah. I remember.
Did that ever come out?
Yeah, it did. As Final Fantasy 15. They restructured it into a new game.
No. Now, is that a single player game?
Yeah. That's a single player game. It's Backstreet Boys in their car going across the countryside trying to take down an empire.
Yeah. Yeah, Kat asked the question I was thinking. Was it good at all?
It's got some charm. The beginning of the game's really fun. It feels really open at first. If you prefer more active gameplay, like 12 or On or something closer to maybe even Kingdom Hearts, it can be fun. It's not a turn-based game. I really like the turn-based games, but I have played other ones. You can ride chocobos, really On. You even have fishing. We were talking about earlier fishing in WoW. They have fishing in that game.
Now, Final Fantasy Adventure came out for the Game Boy in 1991.
Yeah. I think that might be the one I'm talking about, too.
Later released in Europe as Mystic Quest.
Mystic Quest, yeah. Which I believe is... they're the same line. But there's the
Now, it
Final
says
Fantasy
that
Mystic Quest here in Super Nintendo.
Now, this says Final Fantasy. It is the first game in the Mana series.
Yeah. Okay, so it's the Mana... I knew it was some other series. But it's not actually a Final Fantasy game. It was just branded a Final Fantasy game here.
Yeah, but the Mana series...
That like Secret of Mana, Legend of Mana, Sword of Mana, Children of Mana, Trials of Mana.
Was there a final? So I played Final Fantasy Adventure on the Game Boy,
Yeah,
but I never played any of the Secret of Mana games.
they're really
Well, I guess
fun.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard, but I've just never gotten around to it.
Secret of Mana is probably like
Oh,
top 5 maybe Super Nintendo games.
I'm sure. I just never got around to it. Okay, so then they came out. So the other two, I guess they changed the name, or maybe they're just completely different. It says Final Fantasy Legend 2.
Well, because I think Legends and Adventure are 2 different series, right? Because there's
guess
one
so.
other series that might be the one I'm thinking of that has the longer name, and I think like the word demon is in it somewhere, but it's like a long Japanese name. It's a completely different series, but it was sold as Final Fantasy here in the West.
Okay, so I'm confused. Maybe I played Final Fantasy Legend.
Yeah.
Yeah, I played both. Well, Final Fantasy Legend, there were like 3 of them.
Yep. And
All for
Legends, that's
Game
the one where you're scaling up the tower, right?
Yeah.
And at the very end, you fight God, and then he basically is like, "No, you're not going to beat me." Sends you down into the basement, and then you have to scale back up and fight him again, and finally kill him. But it's basically a story about killing God. Yeah.
So there's a Legend 2. Looks like also for the Game Boy, and then a Legend 3.
Yeah.
Crazy. Here's somebody who did Final Fantasy Legend 3, any percent glitchless in 2 hours and 39 minutes.
But it's because Final Fantasy was a popular name. Like, it really soared here. Probably because of how popular Dungeons & Dragons was at the time. Right? Final Fantasy sold really well, better than other franchises that did better in Japan, like, say, Dragon Quest, because Dragon Quest is far more popular than Final Fantasy in Japan. So they marketed quite a few different games under the brand of Final Fantasy that aren't actually Final Fantasy games.
Right.
It's kind of like marketing Doki Doki Panic as Super Mario Brothers 2 here in America, yeah.
Kat said she was so excited for it, but then it just never came out.
Yeah. The ending to 15 is disappointing.
Oh.
Like,
They drive the car off a cliff?
No, they don't. They don't, Thelma and Louise it out.
That's right.
Yeah, no. It does come to a hard ending, and it's a little disappointing. Mostly, it's not even that the route they took was disappointing. It's they didn't end it well enough, because when you write a story and you build things up, hey, my nose is itchy. It's like snapping back a rubber band, and your climax, and your conclusion, all that has to have the same proportionate snap back of however far you pulled it back to be satisfying. And it was like limp. That's the best way to describe the ending to that game. It was limp.
Yeah. Just kidding. Well,
yeah.
maybe it was better that never played it, Kat.
GMT was just thinking of Doki Doki Panic. Okay. That's a fun game.
I was just thinking about Doki Doki Literature Club.
Yes, both games that have heartbeats in them. I like.
What's funny is that
what do you say?
I was gonna say what's funny is that game that was not originally a Super Mario game had contributed so much to the Super Mario lore.
It's like where Shy Guys come from and stuff like that. And...
Yeah, I mean the whole there's a whole category in Super Mario Maker called Ninja speedruns. Ninja came from SMB too.
Yeah. Well, I like the name of that game because Doki Doki Panic. Doki Doki is the Japanese onomatopoeia for the heartbeat, so it's Doki 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 Doki. So it's basically just saying it's a heart attack. That's kind of the name of the game. Is just heart attack. Some way of saying it.
Yep. None of us knew at the time this was not the original Super Mario 2. They were probably right. That
Yeah.
the American.
Oh, have you played
Audience
Lost
would
Levels?
not-
It's pretty hard.
Yeah, but I mean, nowadays it's like, yeah, everyone's looking for a challenge like that. But at the time, I think it would have been too hard for Americans.
Hey, at least
They
Doki
just
Doki
wouldn't.
Panic, our version, let us play as Princess Peach for the first time. Little
That's right.
Princess Toadstool flying around.
Mm-hmm. Pretty cool. It really is the Die Hard 2 of the series.
I like Die Hard 2. Die Hard 2 is like, I think, my favorite plane explosion in any movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was sitting on the plane smoking cigars, you know. At the last one. I don't know if you're talking about that one or the one with the innocent passengers.
Well, in Die Hard 2, at the airport where it's frozen over, the plane just explodes. Like, it sets up, it's one of the climactic parts of the movie.
Now, there's two planes there. So there's the one at the end and there's the one in the middle. Well, anyway,
Yeah.
one of these days I should play Doki Doki Literature Club. I think I have it in my library. Yes, I do.
Yeah. I definitely don't recommend anybody ever play Final Fantasy 13, though.
Oh, come on, man.
I just don't.
I like Final Fantasy 13.
You
I
barely
never
play
played the whole
game.
thing, but, you know, I played like the first half.
The game basically plays itself. All you really do is make sure that your team's in the right
That was
formation.
okay for me, I guess.
Yeah. It's basically a hallway.
Yeah.
Like, the whole game is just like a hallway that you go down that changes scenery every so often. Well, until you get to, what's it called? Grand Pulse. It's a little more open, but it's still basically a hallway. It doesn't even really branch off like 12 did. Because 12, you could argue, is a bunch of hallways. But it's a bunch of branching hallways that connect together to make an open world. 13 just...
But I have to say,
really
like,
isn't.
Final Fantasy 9... Final Fantasy 9 was too confusing to me. Like, I couldn't figure out what to do next. It's just...
I think that's everybody's
It
complaint
wasn't linear
for
enough.
all three of the PlayStation Final Fantasies. That's usually the complaint that you get for any of them. Like, a lot of people complain that 7 was too confusing
Yeah.
for them. Yeah.
I guess. Yeah, I think I felt like... I think I got about halfway through 7 and then couldn't figure out what to do next. And that's probably why I never finished it. Because I was like... I got, like, to the golden saucer or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that's as far as I got.
Well, the part where most people
And I
get
was
stuck,
like, I
you
don't
get
know what to do.
halfway through
And I
7,
looked
you have
around.
to take first disc out and put disc 2 in.
Yeah, no, that's not where I had problems. I don't think I got to the second disc. I don't know.
And then the third disc is really just the last dungeon in Sephiroth. That's like, there wasn't even really enough to put on a third disc, it just couldn't fit on the 2, so they needed a third one. It's basically just Sephiroth,
They
that's
should-
all that disc is.
Yeah, they should have split it into like 2 or 3 different games, and have it come out for the for the N64. Since they
So
couldn't
like
fit
Final
it
Fantasy
all.
13, which was split into like 3 different games.
Right. Yeah.
Because, okay, Lightning Returns is actually a good game. But I still can't recommend that people play it unless you're okay with being, like, super confused. Because you have to play 13, 1, and 2 to get to it. To, like, actually understand what's going on. But once you get to, like, Lightning Returns, the combat's fine because it's really just focused on lightning. And it's easy, it's fluid. It's really just like her changing jobs and stuff like that in the middle of combat. But the story is like this mega myth where like lightning is this cosmic messiah, and there's like Snow is the host for the equivalent of Satan and stuff. Like, it's a really interesting cosmic event that's going on in Lightning Returns.
Weird.
It's great.
I think that's. I see. I own all 3, of the Final Fantasy 13 games, but the third one is the one I've played the least.
Yeah. That's the only one I think is actually genuinely fun. Like, because 2 is basically more of the same of 1, but, you know, following her sister for the most part. And it's like,
Yeah.
The game also couldn't make me like Lightning as a character. She had no substantial development. Like, she's developing, but it's not until Lightning returns that she has any substantial character development. And she's got, like, the personality of a brick.
That's female protagonists these days.
Unlike, well,
She's the-
who should have been the protagonist of 12, which you're not familiar with the character, but Ash, or what's Princess Amelia or something like that. I don't know how you get Ash from Amelia, but Ash is one of the characters you pick up in the game, of the 6 main characters. And she should have been the main character of the game. It's basically her story. Right. She is the royalty that is in a bind, and you're helping her out fix everything that's going on with the Empire that took over and stuff like that. And she... Well, okay, Basha was originally supposed to be the main character, but even story-wise, it's kind of Ash's story. Like, if you really pull it down, even if you use Basha as the main character... the story would still kind of revolve around Ash. And so Bosch is in the game they have these things called judges which work for the Empire, and there are knights or guardians who have kind of like a similar job in the Kingdom of Rabanastre, and that's what Bosch was. Bosch was like a loyal head knight to the crown, who was framed by the fact that he happens to have an identical twin. Be a traitor, and he was kept up in prison, and they eventually rescue him. He has a really good story too, but he was originally planned to be the main character. Even if they followed it that way, the story would still revolve around Ash. Yeah, they didn't think any of the other characters would be that popular because they gave you Vaughn. Yeah, I like she said I personally think Balthier should have been the main character. Balthier is the character with the most personality. I would have preferred him to be the main character. You could have written the story around him.
And what's weird is that I've literally heard about none of this. Like, how not market this game at all? Because like, I know all, like, even though I hadn't played it at all, I knew all about Final Fantasy 9 and 10, for that matter. Because they just had, I don't know, memorable looking characters, and I saw a bunch of previews, but 12 just went right in the memory hole. I don't remember any of this.
No, they did market somehow. I don't know. But Balthier was cool. He's a sky pirate who actually used to be a judge himself. There's a whole story to that. But when you first meet him, he walks into the room, and Vaughn's like, "Who are you?" And he's like, "Why, I play the leading man." He's got like such charisma. He's a well-made character, and basically like his sidekick. He's kind of Han Solo in a way. He's basically like the Final Fantasy Han Solo, but instead of having a big Wookiee next to him, he's got a tall bunny girl as a comrade, which already makes him better automatically than Han Solo. If Han Solo had a bunny girl following him around, 10 out of 10. Yeah, the voice acting was great for that time too. There was a lot of bad voice acting around like PlayStation 2 era. But yeah, so I'm talking about female protagonists though. Ash is actually a very well-made character. Yeah. She's got motivation. She's got areas where she's weakened, why she needs help with other people. She shows real emotion. And she's got like real trauma in her life too. What happened previously in the story. So she's a good character. The main characters, the ones that are actually made to be the two main characters, are awful. And that's Vaughn and Penelo. Two most forgettable characters. in the game, and they were made to be the main characters, like Kat said before. They didn't think an older character would be popular. And they're basically like audience insert characters, the every boy and the every girl, and they are street urchins that you meet in the city of Rabanastre. Vaughn himself is a street rat who basically steals things and sells it to the dude who raised them. They don't go too much into Pinello, though you find out in Revenant Wings, based on her job, that she's kind of a dancer.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some implications that can be made there, but otherwise she's also a kind of like a street rat. They all work for, what's his guy, Morello or something like that. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But he's a bonga that took care of them. And these guys are boring. Like, they have no personality, really. They're kids, so you're not expecting too much personality from them, but their whole personality is Miguelo. That's it. I was kind of close with the sounds. Miguelo. Their whole personality is, we've lived on the streets of this city our entire life, so everything about this world we're exploring is new and strange to us, like it is to you, the player. That's basically the whole point of their existence.
Kat says if they wrote him out of the game, the story wouldn't change at all.
Yeah. Pretty much. They're forgettable. You could have put 2 more interesting characters in their place, it would have been much better.
They have such nice clothes for living on the streets.
Yeah. With
I'm sure.
Vaughn's got like that stereotypical male Final Fantasy vest that barely covers anything up. And I think that it was common in 11 as a clothing type, like having those type of vests, and it kind of follows the fact that Titus is how they pronounce it in Japanese. I think a lot of people here call him Titus, but he basically had a short jacket that It's like they're making the male's clothes shorter. I mean, I don't care.
Yeah.
Walking around showing off for like hair, but it's weird fashion sense.
Yeah, showing off the male midriff.
Yeah. Like, it's fine. I don't really care. It's just like I figured you would have, as designers, more fashion sense. Like, I like Snow's design as a character. Snow's got like that big trench coat. He's got like a beanie on and stuff like that. And just put people in interesting clothes. I don't know. It's not like the clothes aren't that interesting in Final Fantasy 12, because at least they're consistent, right? Everybody's clothes look consistent to the area they're supposed to be in, so it's kind of interesting in their weird steampunk medieval world. Everybody in Rabanastre kind of dresses the same. You go to other cities, they all kind of dress the same. People look like they're from where they're supposed to be from. So I can't really complain about that at all. Yeah.
Well, we should probably wrap up.
I thought we'd go a little over time because it cut out, yeah. But yeah, we can start wrapping up. Especially because we're just talking about 12 again. I'm pretty sure I've talked about most of this stuff on the podcast before. But I really like the game, and I think more people should play it. It kind of got, like, I guess slept on is the term people use now by a lot of people.
Yeah.
Just because, I don't know, Final Fantasy on PlayStation 2.
Yeah, I mean, for some reason, I think I lumped it in with 11, thinking maybe it was an MMO, or they just skipped it, went straight to 13. I had no idea it even existed.
Yeah.
Buck says, you mean like, unlike 15, where the world looks like Final Fantasy, but the characters all dressed like a 90-year boy band?
Yeah. It's just, I love the world of Kat saying Final Fantasy 12, how you explore cities underground and a city in the sky. It's all great. Which one's the one in the sky? Is that Bujurba, I think, maybe? I used to know, I've played it like a year and a half ago was the most recently, but I used to know all these names off the top of my head. And which one was which. There is a town called Bujurba, I'm just trying to remember what the location was. I could be thinking of a different one. I just remember because Bujurba's a fun name to say. But yeah, there's a lot of cool places. You go through mine shafts. There's the Phone Coast, where there's like a whole city on the coast, like a beach little... it's not even really a city, it's like a campment for hunters. But there is like a beach port city you go to as well. There's like a Balfenheim. There's a mountain city with a temple. There's all kinds of really cool locations in that game. It is a beautiful game for the era that it was made. The remake makes it look even better. But I remember being astounded when I made it to the Sand Sea, because there's a place called the I can't remember. It's the On or Om Yensa. There's two different Yensa Sand Seas. There's like an East and West Sand Sea that you have to go through. And when they show up, it's in a cutscene, which isn't rendered in engine, obviously. But he reaches in, and it's sand. It looks like sand, but it also looks like an ocean, like as fluid as waves are. And there's like this entire just sea made of sand in the game. Oh, excuse me. I had a cough building up there. But yeah, it's great. I love it. Ivalice is a very, very interesting world. And the way the summons work in that game is cool too, because you it's one character stays out at a time when you bring out one of the Eidolons, and that character's still there, so they can be killed. If they're killed, the Esper goes away, the Eidolon. But the Eidolon's also there too, and it's got its own health, and it kind of usually walks in front of you like a tank, and it's got its own moves that it does and everything. So it's kind of like the person who summons it buddies up with them, and those are the only two people on the map. And you just got like this huge Colossus beast there. And that uses your mischarge, but there's also a thing in the game called quickenings. Your mist quickenings. And basically it's a quick time event that pops up. And at any time, and I got really good at these quickenings, at any point in time in the game, you can pull it up to attack something. And your characters each do like the super move, and while they're doing the cinematic for the super move, a little quick time event comes up at the bottom that has like 3 buttons that you can hit, and it will let you go to the next character super move, and then you can refresh it if they don't show up, and if you run out of the mist, you can keep refreshing it. It'll say recharge, and you do that and you refresh again, and it gets shorter and shorter and shorter the longer it goes, so it's like your reaction has to get faster and faster and faster at it. I think the highest I did is I had a chain once that was 25. Yeah, that was the highest. I got a 25 chain, and depending on what your chain was, would also have like an even bigger super move that happens at the end. So my 25 chain ended up summoning a black hole, and I think I did like 1,000,000 damage through the whole move. It was probably not that high, but it was some ridiculous number for that game. I pretty much one-shot the boss with it. But I got really good at the quickenings at one point in time. And it's basically just doing one hand, because it's the 4 buttons and the trigger to toggle through. So it's just,
Kat says she needs to figure out the refresh button on her PC game controller.
Yeah, you do. Because you could get through the game without doing it, but to show you how like impactful the quickenings are, I had a friend who used Game Shark because he liked the story of games, but he didn't like playing. He's the type of person that like these super easy modes I was complaining about would have been perfect for, except in recent years he actually started playing through games, and has beaten more games now too. Because I feel like when you cheat, you kind of lose interest in games faster.
Yeah.
And he cheated to bump all of his characters to level 99 at the start of the game. And yet, he made it to a point in the game, like 2/3 in. Maybe even shorter, like later than that. But it's not the end. It's like one of the critical points in the game. And he couldn't get past it, despite the fact that his characters are at level 99, because he's been relying on them being 99 and never learned how to do the strategy properly. So that was another thing hitting him. And he didn't understand how the quickening system worked. So he would like use 1 or 3. Like he would use up to 3, and then after that he'd be done. He didn't understand the rest of it. And it'd be like, why are you using this? This doesn't do a lot of damage. I'm better off just hitting him. So I picked the controller and I did it, and I think the first time I did it was after years of not playing the game, since he went back to it later. And I got like 21 on the first try and just nuked the boss and it was dead. And he's like, oh, that's how that works. And of course I did like max damage too, because all of his characters are bumped up to as high as they can go. So my quickenings are really powerful. Yeah,
Crazy.
it does make a difference.
Yeah, it would be like doing a cheat so that you start Breath of the Wild with all of the all the most powerful weapons, but then you have to go to Eventide Island and you totally screw up.
It's like, I've got all the hearts, I've got all the stamina, but I still have no idea what I'm doing.
Exactly.
Yeah. And you know what? That's probably enough overtime. I'm just trying to think of making up for the time that happened while the stream was down. So we can start
you're
wrapping up.
only 5 or 10 minutes. So.
Yeah, a lot of times when we do overtime, I'll give more than the amount that was taken out just to be charitable. Because we're trying to put on a show for people. And you don't want to be stingy. But yeah,
I don't
thanks
know.
for.
I don't
No,
know
you're
12,
not.
so I can't really contribute.
Yeah. But I think overall it was a fun conversation. I had a good time. We'll see you all next time. Thanks for coming around. If you aren't already subscribed, please do on whatever network you are watching or listening to this later on. And the Vomitorium on the thing will pop up next Wednesday at 6 Central.
Ciao.
Central. Yeah. Catch you later.
See ya.